सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have great pleasure in extending a very warm welcome to a very distinguished speaker, Mr. Tarek Fatah. Well, and also, of course, great pleasure in welcoming you all in good numbers. I think this will make the discussions post his talk that much more interesting. Mr. Tarek Fatah, to just introduce him, and I'll make it very brief. He is supposed to be 3 in 1. That is, of course, I will leave out that he's an Indian born in Pakistan and lives in Canada. Actually, I asked him in my room as to how do you fix these 3 things together. So that answer was left incomplete when we moved out. But he rolled 3 things in one. He's an author and a columnist and also a broadcaster. Has written 2 books which created quite a bit of interest and also, I would say, flutter. And those books names are Chasing a Mirage, in which he has come up with some interesting facts about the Islamic history and explaining the rise of Islamic radicalism. And his other book is The Jew is Not My Enemy. Obviously, the subject itself is of great interest to people in the Muslim world. He stands for the liberal Islam and has been trying to write opposition to the fundamentalists and radicalism. How much he has succeeded or not succeeded, only he will give an assessment about that. And of course, Pakistan is a country that occupies a lot of his time, and to say the least, it also occupies a lot of time of the Indians. I think we are also obsessed with Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, has all the reasons to be obsessed with India, but I think the Indians should spend less time on Pakistan than the Pakistanis do on India. And these are all the issues on which perhaps he will talk about, and as to what does he suggest for us to do with Pakistan in our dealings with Pakistan. We'll be very much interested in hearing his suggestions on that particular aspect. And so I think what I'll do, we had a talk in the JNU yesterday, and maybe some of the people from the JNU may be here today, because his talk, there was a certain amount of time allotted, and perhaps the discussions would have carried on beyond that, so some of them may have come, so you are welcome. If anybody from the JNU is here, more than welcome, and we'll like to hear their questions and Mr. Tarek Fatah's views. Now, whatever he says, Mr. Tarek Fatah, are his views. And if we have our views on that, you can discuss up to a point, because we will be short of time. The rule of the game will be that 40 minutes he will talk. Provided if you want to take more, you welcome, but 40 minutes will be a good time. And 40 minutes question answer. Beyond that, we cannot go, because then this discussion can carry on till cow come home. So we will leave 40 minutes for the discussion, 40 minutes for his talk, and after that, a cup of tea for you outside. So on to Mr. Tarek Fatah.
Namaskar. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me. I can promise you I won't take 40 minutes. I'd rather have you, ask questions that you have in mind. But I do want to give my perspective why I think in Pakistan lies both the problem and the answer, the question and the answer to why the rest of the world, why human civilization is involved, what I would call the Fourth World War, the third being the Cold War, which was only cold for Europe. It was pretty hot, as M.J. Akbar mentioned in Jaipur. It was pretty hot for Ethiopia or Congo or Vietnam or Cambodia or a whole lot of places where proxy wars between the Warsaw Pact and NATO were fought, and where India was a security pact with the Soviet Union, and Pakistan was part of NATO, CENTO and CETO, and earlier on what was called the Baghdad Pact. But let me go back to the end of the Second World War, where you will find the birth of Pakistan taking place. On May 5th, when fighting had died down in Berlin, and the West was trying to weasel out a deal with the Nazis on the Baltic side and on the areas northwest of Denmark, to create a government there and do a separate peace talks or surrender, make Nazi Germany surrender to United States and Britain. Berlin had already fallen to the Red Army. By 7th, all fighting had died down and the war was over. On 5th of May, Churchill, in his wisdom, was less worried about Europe than he was about India and what he called British interests in the Indian Ocean region. And on that day, he asked the cabinet to come back to him, or his cabinet secretary to come back to him within 15 days as to the impact of the Soviet Union and the Red Army winning the war against Nazis, and its impact on what he called British India and the British interests in the Indian Ocean. 15 days later, the report that was presented to him said quite explicitly that the Red Army had already created two states in Iran. One was Mahabad, a few not surviving republics now, and an Azeri republic. Both were formed with Kurdish and Azeri communists. Afghanistan was under quite a pro-Soviet king with very close relations with the Indian ruling Congress. On the far east, the Kuril Islands had already been taken over by the Red Army. And in this geostrategic situation, where the West had no armies and the Soviet Union had about 20 million men under arm, you need to understand, 30 million Russians had already died. It was a country fully geared for a very long-term war. And Churchill asked the Indian National Congress for the right to establish military bases of, primarily Britain was the leading power, the United States at that time was secondary, in the northwest of India, which today means what is Pakistan. But they had in mind some of the princely states in northwest, which was Swat, Gilgit, these areas. And the Indian National Congress, as expected, said a flat no. That post-independence, the Republic of India will have absolutely no place for foreign military bases. And that is when the idea of Pakistan is first floated. I'm talking 1945, and you have to see that in 39 elections, the Muslim League had been wiped out. And the 1946 elections are prepared, are run for the first time with active British help to enable the Muslim League to create the buffer state that was absolutely necessary to stop the Red Army from reaching its goal of literally going to the Arabian Sea, which the Chinese, by the way, are now doing quite effectively. In the 1946 elections, Even before that, Mr. Jinnah was quite content. What was the people who made Pakistan were what was later to become East Pakistan. Punjab didn't have a Muslim League government. The NWFT had a Congress government, and Sindh, except for the pressure, Allah Baksumro was pro-Congress, and Balochistan, by the way, became an independent country 3 days before India and Pakistan became independent. So it was the state of Kalat which had direct relations to Westphal, not to Delhi. It is in this framework that the Islamic State of Pakistan is created, and a lot of effort was put together. And if you look at the elections of 46, the only place where the Muslim League formed a government was Bengal, with Sayyid Sohrawardi as, I think it was called the Prime Minister. Punjab did not have a Muslim League ministry. If you look at it from that point of view, then the Islamic State was nurtured for the Third World War, which was the Cold War, to use the forces of Islamism to fight against the infidel atheism that was coming out from the teachings of Karl Marx and Engels and implemented by Stalin and later on by Mao Zedong in China. And this is why, if you do not understand the significance of Pakistan as to the reason why we have an Islamist movement around the world today, your analysis or the outcome of it will fall flat. If you want to visualize an India that was undivided, I can assure you there would have been no Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. The concept of an Islamic State was absolutely foreign to Arabs, to Iranians, to Turks, to Indonesians, and to Indians to a large degree. Till the turn of the 20th century, you have to understand that Iqbal's Tarana became a Milli Tarana only after Tagore got the Nobel Prize, which is another big division that occurs. I wish they had given it to Iqbal, a lot of problems of ego would have been settled. But imagine the point where these turns take place. There is no poet in Iran in the last 500 years who talks about an Islamic State. There's no Arab that wants it. The entire political movement of the 18th, 19th century talks of the nation state. In fact, if Islam ever had a golden period, it was from 1850 to 1950. It is the only time where, after comprehensive defeats, people came to recognize that the printing press was superior than the Katib. So to write the Quran by hand was not something holy. It could be done by a printing press. By the way, the last handwritten newspaper in Pakistan got printed in the late 70s, 1970s. Jung was still handwritten all these days. So supreme was the thought that writing with a pen on paper with ink was holy and printing on a press was unholy. And if you recall, the Portuguese brought the printing press to the Mughal emperor. He said, "What is the Caliph saying?" He said, "Well, the Caliph in Istanbul has said this is haram." So he said, "Okay, then let the Christians of India use it, and the Muslims will stay backward as much as they want." So only between the era of 1850 to 1950 you find people thinking, critiquing, questioning. Iqbal's Shikwa and Jawab-e-Shikwa are two turning points again. That the man who takes pride in India and mocks God, within 10 years is surrendering himself to the power of the Islamists and becomes a pan-Islamist. By the way, he writes to the king the foreign minister of Iran, saying, "Don't you know Tagore is a Hindu?" And says, "He's a Bengali. And you are inviting him, not understanding this, that he's working against the interests of Muslims in India." I wish he were alive and heard that the Bangladeshis honor him as the national poet, which are the people who made Pakistan. So, if you look at the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Islamic State right now, Boko Haram, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Lashkar-e-this, Lashkar-e-that, Jangli, all these Pakistan army irregulars who don what in army term they call the mufti or sweets, and then take on one form or the other, they all follow the essence of what came about in the Milli Tarana of Iqbal, first printed in 1924 in Lahore. They say it was written after he came back from Europe. And it is based on the false notion that the nation state can only be formed on the basis of religion. Such a failed construct, launched by a man who didn't know what was Islam. Number two, both Iqbal and Jinnah had their heritage to very close Hindu past. It was the grandfathers who were Hindu. It's not like people who were 8th generation Muslims and forgotten where they came from. All of this was epitomized in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And my suggestion to you is that unless and until the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, as long as it stays, India will have no peace. Because its very essence, its existence is based on the hatred of its heritage. It's not just a hatred of the Hindu, it's the hatred of itself that says, I am not a Punjabi. I am some Kazakh who came and invaded and raped Lahore, and therefore my missile will be called Abdali. It is so bizarre that no other human history, no other people in human history could be accused of celebrating the rapist. People who raped Lahore are celebrated. And what is even more interesting is that the victims of these marauders were often fellow Muslims. But the Pakistani only celebrates Babur, not Lodi. They have no clue who's Lodi. And Babur could say that this was absolute rubbish country. What sort of people live here? Look at the color of their skin. But the admiration is there. That a white person from the North Central Asia, the more pure Muslim, will ride his coattails. And if you think that a bit of education would do you good, then you should ask why Indians educated, Muslims educated in the UK are heading towards ISIS, but the Indian peasant who's not very educated in Patna or Hyderabad is not going there. Which falls flat on this argument that the real problem is enlightenment. In fact, the more enlightened, unless you destroy the notion of Islamism and Jihad and Sharia, you cannot have enlightenment. And for all my Indian Muslim friends who stay shy in taking on this beast that is out to destroy human civilization, I think it's time for you to take responsibility. Because Shah Waliullah came from you. The first pan-Islamist and the first pan-Islamism predates Pakistan's movement. It even predates Iqbal's Milli Tarana. It goes back to Shah Waliullah and Abdul Wahab, who met in the glorious kingdom, enlightened kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where everyone believed the world was flat, in the 1750s. Both Abdul Wahab and Shah Waliullah believed the world was flat. And if the Muslim Ummah is to take the inspiration from these two people who caused immense harm to the Muslims of India, in the end the victims of Islamism often are Indian Muslims who are dark-skinned, who are not even allowed to fight next to ISIS guerrillas. They are only employed as cooks, cleaners and sanitation workers in the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or whatever they call it. So look at how far back it is going without the presence of Islamism. And by the way, Shah Waliullah and Abdul Wahab do not come in vacuum. they enter the field at the worst part of Indian Islamic history, which is the guy you celebrate on your streets, that is Aurangzeb. No other people in history would name a street after someone so brutal, someone so murderous, someone so hateful of Hindus and Shias and Zoroastrians, his own father, his brother, his son, his sister. He is culpable in 3 murders. Yet Dara Shikoh doesn't have a street in Delhi. And Aurangzeb is there. So there's something rotten in the kingdom of India as well, sir. Some of Pakistan has rubbed on to you and it's done really bad. So if we cannot get this through our heads, that by meeting Pakistanis and allowing them to run circles around us, because it is so good to feel that we met our enemy. मतलब दोस्त से तो सभी गले मिलते हैं, कोई दुश्मन से मिले तो बात है ना. तो ये अपनी ईगो सेटिस्फाई करने के लिए हमें पाकिस्तानियों से गले मिल के आए. और भी किसी ने हमसे बिल नहीं दिया. अरे did you ask them what do you feel about the 2-nation theory? नहीं, उस तक तो बात ही नहीं है. निहारी मुफ्त में खाली था, घर में बुला गया, छत पे पतंग उड़वा दिया. I am so sick and tired of guilt-ridden Hindus feeling good about Lahore and Karachi that I can't get my head over it. But did you ask, will your daughter be allowed to marry a Hindu? No, उस तक बात ही नहीं आई साहब. इतना नाश्ता खिलाया तक, अरे for goodness sake, does the guy believe in 2-nation theory? If he does, he's a hate monger, he's a fascist, and he should be rejected. If he believes in the Indian heritage of his, he is free to be a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu, Buddhist. I mean, Buddha created a whole new movement. Nobody told him you have left India. He's as Indian as Guru Nanak, isn't he? This is the place that flourished religions. Ajmer mein, the gentleman comes and lives where there is no Muslim, and most of his followers are non-Muslims. The first mosque in India is near Kochi, about 100 miles north of it. Where do you think, did he have a claim form that he came, sir, partition ho gaya, mujhe zameen chahiye masjid ke liye? No. He came, the local resident said, that's okay, you want a mosque, we'll build it for you. Now look at it that way. That not a single Indian Muslim considers that to be the arrival of Islam in India. No. We like it when it comes on horseback, like Muhammad bin Qasim. 8 years later, the invasion of this land is celebrated in Old Delhi, in Urdu books, authored by Naseem Hijazi, and being sold here for 30 rupees each. But it's written in Urdu, which nobody in India now reads. So you go to Srinagar and it's written in Urdu, America Murdabad and Ayatollah Khomeini Zindabad, and nobody knows. Everybody thinks, in Balochistan, by the way, there's a mountain which will likha Ab Ki Baar Modi Sarkar. Every Indian thinks it's written Allahu Akbar. How do you know? I can't read Gujarati. Agar uske likha ho, your bakery hai, somebody tells me there's no parking, I'll take his word for it, no parking hai bhai. We have become prisoners of our own stupidity. Who imagine somebody, ya pure India mein kisi ne nahi likha bahar pe, ab ki baar Modi sarkar. I'm looking at this picture and saying, किसने लिखा भाई? बोला साहब वो हमारे समाचार में लिख दिया हुआ, वाजा, कैसा लगा? मैंने कहा लेकिन इंग्लिश में लिखते ना रे, साहब अब ऊपर कौन जाएगा? बोला अच्छा हिंदी में नहीं पढ़ सकते? मैंने भैया 1 बिलियन में कुछ लोग रह गए उर्दू पढ़ने वाले, बाकी तो आपने एक्सपोर्ट कर दिया पाकिस्तान. वहां सिंध के अंदर ऐसी तैसी कर दी यूपी वालों ने, and Sindhi got banned. So it is artificial insemination of stupidity done in various parts of the Indian subcontinent in the name of Islam. So who is going to fight this? Indian Muslims. If you are not a Muslim, you can't fight this jihad. You cannot. You don't even understand Pakistan, let alone Islamism. Some Indians will have to die to fight this jihad. and they will have to be Muslims. मैं आपसे बता रहा हूं कि ये जिम्मेदारी हम पे है, हमको पनाह मिली इस हिंदुस्तान में. Do you know that the Prophet's family sought refuge in Raja Dahir Sindh when no place on earth allowed them? Do you know that Muhammad bin Qasim came here to take the Prophet's family and hang them in Baghdad and Damascus? पता ही नहीं किसी को. That Ghazi Shah ka Mazar, if people have been to Karachi, you would see right on the coast in Clifton, it's one of the descendants of the Prophet, killed by Muhammad bin Qasim. और हीरो कौन है मुसलमानों का? मोहम्मद बिन कासिम. फॉलो किसको करते हैं? प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम. Are you crazy? I mean, how much sense does one have to make mathematically, physically, historically, sociologically, archaeologically for someone to say, for goodness sake, कभी तो बेटे का नाम अशोक रख लो. कब तक अरबों के नाम रखोगे? अरब तो नहीं रखता किसी का नाम दिले. है कोई? 5000 साल में भी नहीं होगा कोई. तो Islam doesn't mean you have to have Arab names, because Arabs could be atheists, Christian, Jews. वो तो नहीं अपना नाम बदल रहे. तो हम ईरानी तो नहीं रख रहे अरब नाम, तुर्क तो नहीं रख रहे, इंडोनेशियन भी नहीं रख रहे. बौद्ध का इब्राहिम का नाम जरूर है, उनकी इस्लामिक यूनिवर्सिटी पे लिखा हुआ है. गणेश टेम्पल इज देयर. वो कम मुसलमान है. ये हमने ठेका लिया कि हर अरब का नाम Tarek Fatah. How can I be Tarek Fatah? Seriously, I don't know what my parents were thinking. Am I going to conquer Spain? My brother, by the way, is Mahmoud. So they named 2 sons after 2 generals. Now they were not political people, but imagine Tariq Ali's mother, who recently died yesterday from the Communist Party of India, named her own son as an Islamic general. Then you have a serious problem in not identifying yourself primarily as Indian and then as a Muslim or a Jew or whatever, or an atheist or whatever you wish to be. इस समय में तो कुछ भी आप कर सकते हैं. पैंट के साथ कुर्ता पहन सकते हैं. कहाँ पहन सकते हैं आप? Nowhere else, right? You can come in a lungi, you can come in a suit, you can wear a bow tie, you can do anything. It's the most flexible piece of earth. And if the entire universe died and India was left, there would be nothing then. 500 years ago, there were 1 billion people. We'll start again with 1 billion people. Every religion, every color. गोरे से लेके काला, मणिपुर से लेके मकरान तक, सब हमारे पास हैं. फ्रेंच भी हैं. वो who's that author in Madras who's writing about the Vedas? बताइए. जहां दारा शिको जहां पैदा होके मर गया, जहां डेकोट है, फ्रेंच राइटर है, जहां मेरी दादी वो फ्रेंच, उसकी कब्र है बॉम्बे में. तो उधर तो ओनली थिंग इज रिस्पेक्ट फॉर द अदर एंड थोड़ा सा शुक्रिया करने की आदत डालो कि भैया मोहम्मद की फैमिली को पगा दे दी, थैंक यू सो मच. तैमूर ने पहाड़ बनाए उसके हिंदू स्कल्स के, गलती होगी साहब माफ कर दो. ये क्या हुआ कि नहीं इतना 20 फीट नहीं था, सिर्फ 12 फीट था. यही बहस है ना. इतना जुल्म नहीं किया हमने. 700 साल नहीं किया, 530 साल किया. What is wrong in having a frank discussion about the sanctity of believing in your religion and making sure that this curse that is planted in our souls, that is called the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, is facilitated to disintegrate, because it will. The sooner the better. The more painlessly it is done, the less people will suffer. But for that, you cannot have the parity of these March of the Roosters that you do at the Wagah border. That is the single biggest accomplishment of Pakistan, to say we and India are equal. If you really want to make a stand, tell honest to God, a Boy Scout troop को भेजे वहाँ. रात का फौज होगी, हमारे Boy Scouts होंगे. Then they will understand who they are dealing with. अब करते रहे 7% progress, बनाते रहे टैंक, गाड़ी, जहाज, जो कुछ भी है. They have the nukes. And does anyone know what General Kidwai said yesterday morning at the Carnegie Institute? He said, we have tactical nukes for 20 to 50 kilometers. Now mind you, not even the Soviets or the Americans had it. Why do they have it? And I was exchanging views with the general over why, no matter how much you progress, you do not understand that one side is fighting a war to get American citizenship. You know, most Hispanic soldiers, some come to get a university degree. Some come for quote-unquote a tour of duty. Something in my military family I never heard. There is a tour. They make tourism out of war. And they go to Cyprus and Dubai for Russian or Greek prostitutes, and then the soldiers come back to fight another war. Facing them are people who want to die. And I'm not exaggerating. If you believe that Earth is a transit lounge from where you are here in a connecting flight to paradise, then why would you be worried कि toilet के अंदर कौन सफाई कर रहा? You're just looking at the time on the departure flights. यार कब है flight? ये कब delay हो गया ऐसा? जितनी जल्दी जाओ उतना ज़्यादा फायदा. One side wants to die, the other wants to live. In war, even when dying they are winning. And you haven't got it yet. You have to deny them death. And you can deny them death by winning the ideological war. And the ideological war can only be done if there is not even a semblance of anti-Muslim rhetoric, even from the far right Hindu nationalists. It has to be Muslims and the left wing that has to do that. Because unfortunately the right has been anti-immigrant, anti-black, anti-women, anti-abortion, anti-gay. So the track record is so bad कि आपकी बात ही नहीं कोई सुनता. अमेरिका में रिपब्लिकन कुछ भी कह दे, he's known, he's anti everything. हर नई चीज एंटी है. 4 सिलेंडर की गाड़ी 6 हुई, एंटी. गैस की गाड़ी आई, I'm opposed to it. You name anything that makes progress, the Republic is anti. Now if he's right on Islamism, he doesn't have the credibility to lead. The entire Democratic Party, the left, the Labour Party, the Communist Party are involved in Sharia abortionism. They have nothing to offer because the left doesn't know how Google makes money. Na story, कुछ खरीदते, ना बेचते, ना storage, ना truck, ना crane, ना factory, ना धुआं. ये कैसे बनते हैं इनके बिलियन? अभी मार्क्सिस्ट यही सोच रहे हैं तो आसान क्या है? Anti-American. So easy to be anti-American, right? Who is anti-American? The jihadis. Therefore, we and the jihadis are one. So JNU में मुझे किसी ने कहा कि आप में साथ जाते के साथ ही अमेरिका को गाली देते 2-3 ठा सारे एकेडमिक्स खुश हो जाते, बोला अपना आदमी आ गया. आपने जाते कि सर पाकिस्तान को गाली दे दी, वो समझे कि देखो ये आ गया कोई पता नहीं कहां से बीजेपी का आदमी आ गया. This is foolish. But the host walked away. The professor walked away. So after shutting down Q&A, क्योंकि the young, the brilliant students over there. I'm digressing, sorry. But we started by my thesis that the fight or the war against Islamism cannot be won as long as there is an Islamic State of Pakistan. As long as there is Saudi Arabia that feeds it, as long as India caters to Saudi money, and as long as India caters to Iranian petroleum ventures. You are in a fix. You want to win and retain your country as a liberal democracy, whether it is poor or rich, it shouldn't matter. If you want dignity and respect, don't talk about economic progress. Talk about the moral progress. कि हमने भूखा रह के भी इनको शिकस्त दी. पैसे वाले तो वैसे ही जीत जाते हैं, you know. But you will not be able to retake your moral high ground of your 5,000 years of civilization. You cannot tell your children कि सिंध तो चला गया. पंजाब और सिंध जो आपके नेशनल एंथम में आते हैं उनके बच्चों को पता ही नहीं है कि उस साइड पे पंजाब है. That Lahore is the city of Ram's son. People don't know that Mahabharata is seen in Punjab, not in some Ganga Bihar area which they would like you to believe. It's all the Indus Valley. And you lost it, you don't even have a sense. Can you imagine a Muslim saying, oh, Makkah chala gaya, theek hai yaar, to Cairo to hai na? It's impossible. intelligentsia, the MJ Akbar, General Atta kahan hai, yahan hai nahi hai. Oh, there he is. I told him, this is your responsibility. Ye aise bolte hain that you don't need microphones. But your voice is not being heard. निकाले दाराशिकों की उपनिषद को ट्रांसलेट करें और उन समझाएं इनको यही है, दिस इज इट, जन्नत यही है, जन्नत पाकिस्तान या अमेरिका नहीं है. मैंने तो सर अप्लाई भी किया था सिटीजनशिप के लिए, उन्होंने पाकिस्तान में पैदल आदमी को बेचारे बिखर गए सारे हमारे दोस्त इधर उधर, नायकों को दे देते, हमको नहीं देते यार, कैसी जाती है. तो अपने इंटेलिजेंशिया के सर्कल्स में प्रोफेसर से, एकेडमिक से, जनरल से, राइटर से कहें बंद करो ये अमन की आशा. नंबर 2, टॉक्स की हमें जरूरत नहीं है. The only thing Pakistan can offer is international terrorism. We don't want it. There is no need to attend any Pakistan Day events. It is a slap on your face. And people who proudly come on TV and say, we are not Indian. कोई तो होना चाहिए कि उसके मुंह के ऊपर एक अंडा मारे या समथिंग. बचपन में हिंदुस्तान में सीखा था पथराव कैसे करते हैं. मेरा तो बेसिक है कि आप एक्टिविस्ट हो ही नहीं सकते जब किसी को पथराव ना किया हो, किसी को हैकर ना किया हो 12-13 की उम्र तक, ताकि बंद ना हो. लेकिन the guy got away by saying I'm not an Indian. It's infuriating. Oh, where did he come to? He came to the Pakistan High Commission in India. What did he think he was going to Baghdad? And if he doesn't like India, why don't people tell him to go? बिल्कुल 3 मील दूर है, इतनी मार पड़ेगी, इतने जूते पड़ेंगे आजाद कश्मीर के अंदर कि होश ठिकाने आ जाओ, फिर अप्लाई करोगे वापस. यार वो तारिक फतह को तो बुला दिया, मुझे वापस दे दो. And until and unless you realize that Pakistan comprises of just 2 people, Muslim Punjabis and Urdu-speaking UPites that you sent to us to destroy Sindh. And Sindhis will not forgive you for that, but wo baat ki baat hai. Other than that, you cannot see a Pakistan flag in Balochistan. इन पहाड़ों पे अब की बार मोदी सरकार लिखा हो, वहां जितनी फौज भेज देंगे, बांग्लादेशी बनेगा वहां. Another thing that I'm begging you folks to tell your politicians, friends, is that you have to, at some stage, seriously think to call the Kashmir bluff. Yesterday I asked about 200 students, or were they 100, not a single one of them had read the UN Security Council resolutions. Chances are most Indians in the academia have not read it. I am stunned at the position that India takes that it is a bilateral issue. Who are you? You don't have an audience. Nobody even understands what is bilateral. Give me what a complex word is. Where is Shimla? Who's Indira Gandhi? What is Zulfikar Bhutto? The simple reasoning is that the first point of that all Security Council resolution is Pakistan Army and every civilian has to withdraw from the areas that it has occupied after 1947, right? Who else is there? 50,000 Chinese troops. Bluff karke to dekho. You will not hear them come back because who's going to tell the Chinese कि आपसे 25-30 बिलियन डॉलर ले चुके हैं और आपकी फौज ने परमानेंटली बल्तिस्तान को ऑक्यूपाई किया, you have to now move out. Instead of throwing the ball back on their side and making the argument where they look stupid, I've been enough times to the UN Human Rights Commission, Geneva, to see Indian diplomats on the back foot. You have to listen to what Haqqani said, who is, I think, the only Pakistan diplomat who was anti-Pakistan. And he says that I would feel so awkward that my points are getting across and the Indian side is not making the argument where I sometimes felt कि उसका मैं क्या यार ये बोलो तो मेरी लाइन पिट जाएगी. No, it's ridiculous. The guy is on your side, becomes Pakistan's ambassador to United States of America, and one magazine says India needs 50 diplomats to deal with one sharp fellow who's actually from Delhi. Sometime, you don't have to agree with me or not, but think about calling the Kashmir bluff. The air will go out of their bags. You think 2 million Pakistanis living there will say, okay, and Mirpur, where the Bangla Dam is built, that sent what, about 2 million Pakistanis to United Kingdom, fraudulent, who are not, by the way, Lord Nazir is not a Kashmiri, and they don't speak Kashmiri. They are Mirpur, they are Punjabi settlers in Jammu Kashmir. Well, so she would know that. But no one else knows that they are not Kashmiris. So all this bandwagon of people, Sunra, if they dare not leave, even after the Pakistan Army's civilians have withdrawn, India still has the right to retain military control of the valley and Srinagar. This is in the UN Security Council resolutions. Everything in the resolution favors India. There's nothing that favors, क्योंकि plebiscite तक तो बात ही नहीं आई. वो और बात है कि legally Pakistan is bound not to raise the subject. However, you have NGOs to raise those issues. Why can't your foundation say all the bluff? You don't have to commit anyone. In today's day and age, you can affect public policy by non-state actors who don't use AK-47s but Twitter and Facebook, and you can affect change in policy. It has been done. We banned Sharia in Canada totally with 10 people and the social media. And the General Ziaul Haq's Minister of Religious Affairs, who implemented Sharia in Pakistan, got Canadian citizenship and was implementing it in Ontario as a launch base for all of the United States. And we decimated them. Sharia was banned in Canada. To the effect there is no anti-Muslim feelings in Canada. You will never hear of an anti-Muslim incident. Why? Non-Muslim Canadians know that there are enough Muslim Canadians to take care of these lunatics. Where there are no one speaking out against jihadis or Muslims saying that jihad is a foreign construct, like in the United States or Britain, you will always have anti-Muslim appetite. That is not fulfilled. Do these few things, and I can tell you, you can put Pakistan on the back foot. Finally, you have to understand that in 1948, March 27th, which is tomorrow, is it? Or day after? Pakistan military invaded the independent state of Kala and occupied it. It has 6 or 7 civil wars that have gone on. 18,000 Baloch young men are missing. 50,000 are dead. And no Indian knows about this? Nawab Bhupti. I spent a year in...
He was hiding in a cave when he was killed.
Well, he was gassed, he was not killed. They're using chemical weapons that sucks away oxygen and you die out of being choked. The places where the Baloch have fought are mountain alleys in which only one person can go and come, and they are not straight. The muddy areas where this war is being conducted over in the south, there are no sardars. There are doctors and engineers and ordinary workers that are dying, and you know what they beg? Say Wajah, which is brother in Balochi, aap to ja rahe Hindustan. वो बोले खाना ही ये ड्रॉप कर दिया है हमारे ऊपर, कपड़े कंबल डाल दे, बंदूक नहीं डाल सकते. अरे इतने बड़े मुल्क पे कब्जा हुआ है, उस कलात स्टेट का इंडिया से ताल्लुक था. Gospel Bizinger was a personal friend of Jawaharlal Nehru. He was a member of Central Committee of the Indian Communist Party, knew Dange and all those people, played in Aligarh as a football player. बराबर होगा तो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी लेनी पड़ेगी. आप भूटान नहीं है, आप इंडिया हैं, एंड द वर्ल्ड लुक्स एट इंडिया as the only country that can offer a civilization जिसमें रंग, नस्ल, मजहब, नेशनलिटी है ही नहीं। आप मणिपुर से हो, कश्मीर से हो, केरल से हो, आप तराना गाए हो इकबाल सारे जहां से अच्छा है ना। लेकिन जब तक आप दूसरों का ख्याल नहीं रखेंगे, ये जिम्मेदारी आप पे आती है। यू हैव टू लुक आउट फॉर द Tamils of Sri Lanka. Nobody else will. They've been defeated, but there's still a problem there. Who's going to talk about the Baloch? Why should Bangladesh be abandoned in such a way that Pakistan has more infiltration in Bangladesh through the ISI than India has? How is it that ISIS people from Iraq and Syria are meeting in Chittagong? Even today Dhaka Tribune reports that. ज़्यादा आसान confusion पैदा करनी है. This is a closed door meeting. You know what I would do? I would just tweet that Pakistan's nukes are no threat to us because all the Pakistani officers there are on our payroll. कल से हर एक की चेकिंग कम से कम 6 महीने के लिए तो सत्यानाश हुआ ना. ये मैं कर सकता हूं बगैर पैसे के, बगैर किसी उसके. बोला I overheard 3 serving generals say that. सत्यानाश हो जाएगा सबका. अरे प्ले लाइक द पाकिस्तानी, ये चीटिंग करके आप भी लोगों सर पे मारे. You know, you can't win this. These are very devious people. Why? Because they're not bad. They just don't know who they are. When did a people 100 million strong say, यार हमारी मादरी ज़बान जो है ना बड़ी खराब है, तो पंजाबी तो हम बोलते चौकीदार से, let's speak Urdu. Have you ever heard Pakistan television guys debate in Urdu? It's the worst Urdu that money can buy. It is like a comic show. And in the Punjab National Assembly, you are not allowed to speak in Punjabi. That creates for a dysfunctional people who need to be corrected. Just in Pakistan toota, this West Punjab will be a landlocked country which will wake up to see, yaar saade naal ki hue. No books, 100% illiterate in their mother tongue. Is there any people on earth who are 100% illiterate in their own mother tongue? And all of this can be done by India with minimal expenditure, by just showing the high moral ground and saying, Baloch are our brothers. They have been, you know, if you look at the genetic code of most of India, look out what the code is when it says Baloch all the time. I think it's 40% of the strain of our DNA is coming from the Baloch. We don't know. We think it is some Saraswati river that just disappeared somewhere. It is a reality. It's as big as France. It is the most pro-Indian place on earth that the Indians don't know about. On that note, I think that 40 minutes is ज़्यादा करती. So I thank you so much for bearing with me, and I'm sure if there are questions, even if those who think that some of what I said did not suit the academia level that so many official Indians expect all the time, so please be critical of me, but I'll be more than happy to answer you. Thank you.